You think you know Portugal, but did you know part of it sits on 3 tectonic plates, making its islands some of the most volcanic places in Europe? Along the coast, cliffs shoot straight up from the Atlantic. Towns are built right into the rock. The landscape changes fast. Mountains, valleys, and shorelines shifting in every direction. And just offshore, an underwater canyon drops more than 5,000 meters, creating waves found nowhere else on Earth. If you're ready to see a Portugal most people never imagine, make sure not to miss this journey. Did you know Lisbon is older than Rome, with a history going back 3,000 years? Head north and you reach Porto, where the Dom Luís I bridge wasn't designed by Eiffel, but by his top student, giving the city its own version of that iconic iron style. Along the coast, Portugal holds Europe's westernmost point, facing straight into the Atlantic. And far out in that ocean sit the Azores, where lakes actually change color depending on light, depth, and minerals. The islands also sit right on whale migration routes, making them one of the few places in Europe where you can spot giant species close to shore. Down in the Algarve, the ocean gets even more dramatic. Some sea caves are only reachable by boat, including the famous Benagil Cave with its natural skylight. Inland, the scale shifts. Portugal is home to Europe's largest artificial lake, the Algarve, stretching across the Alentejo Plains. Travel to Madeira and you'll find a completely different world. The island's historic levada system runs for more than 2,000 kilometers, cutting through forests and mountains. And in some areas, the cliffs are so steep that farmers use cable cars just to reach fields near the ocean. Along the northeastern border of Portugal lies Douro Natural Park, a landscape carved by one of the deepest river valleys in the Iberian Peninsula. The Douro cuts through layers of granite and schist, forming cliffs that drop sharply to the water below. The valley twists through the hills and long bends, its slopes marked by stone, dry grass, and scattered groves that cling to the ridgelines. The terrain is harsh. Plateaus stretch out above the river, exposed to sun and wind. While narrow tracks descend into the gorge, where the temperature rises and the air grows still. Villages stand on the high ground, built from stone that matches the cliffs, their houses clustered close against the weather. Along the water, the river moves in slow, dark currents between sheer walls. Birds circle above the cliffs, riding the warm air that rises from the valley. In the quieter sections, terraces appear on the slopes, carved into the rock over generations. They follow the contours of the land, holding small fields that overlook the deep channel below. In northern Portugal stands Porto, a city built on steep hills that fall directly into the Douro River. The terrain divides the city into terraces, with narrow streets climbing from the waterfront up toward high plateaus. From the riverbanks, layers of rooftops rise in uneven steps, their tiles glowing in shades of red and brown under shifting light. The Douro shapes everything here. Its channel runs between granite cliffs, carrying slow currents toward the Atlantic. Bridges cross the river at different heights, their steel arcs and stone pillars linking the steep banks. Boats move along the water below, their silhouettes passing between the walls of the valley. The buildings along the slopes carry centuries of use. Walls of stone and painted facades stand beside warehouses built into the hillside. Streets bend and narrow without warning, opening suddenly into small squares or viewpoints that overlook the river. In the central Azores rises Pico Island, shaped by the immense volcanic cone that dominates its horizon. The mountain lifts from the coastline in a broad sweep of dark basalt, climbing toward a summit often wrapped in cloud. Around its base, old lava fields stretch across the land in uneven patterns, their surfaces broken into ridges, fissures, and long flows that reach the sea in jagged formations. The lower slopes carry a patchwork of stone walls built from cooled lava. These enclosures protect small vineyards from wind and salt, forming a geometric landscape that extends toward the coast. Narrow roads move between the walls, curving over uneven ground before descending to villages set near sheltered coves. From these places, the mountain appears as a massive silhouette rising directly from the ocean. In Portugal's far northwest lies Peneda-Gerês National Park, a wide expanse of granite massifs, deep valleys, and high plateaus shaped by wind, water, and time. The mountains rise in long ridges that stretch toward Spain, their slopes broken by boulders, terraces, and patches of forest that cling to the uneven ground. From the higher elevations, the land drops into narrow valleys where rivers run in clear, fast-moving channels over polished stone. The terrain changes sharply with altitude. Upper plateaus hold open grasslands and scattered rock formations, while lower areas turn into dense oak and pine forests, threaded with small waterfalls. Old paths traverse the slopes, worn by centuries of movement between villages, pastures, and sacred sites, tucked into remote corners of the mountains. Alcacer Do Sal rises above the slow curves of the Douro River, its whitewashed buildings climbing the slope toward a fortified hilltop. The river widens below the town, spreading into marshes and rice fields that stretch across the flatlands. From the water's edge, the hillside appears in layered steps, with narrow streets winding upward between stone walls and tiled roofs. The castle dominates the crest, standing on exposed ground that overlooks the broad plain. Paths descend from the hilltop through older quarters, where passageways tighten between houses built close to the incline. Down by the river, quays follow the calm flow, and long reflections form on the surface as tides move through the estuary. Lisbon stands on the western edge of Europe, a city built on hills that descend toward the Tagus River. The terrain shapes everything. Streets rise and fall in steep angles. Climbing from old neighborhoods to broad viewpoints that overlook the water. The river widens into a vast estuary, its surface shifting with wind and tide before opening to the Atlantic. The city carries long layers of history in its streets. Narrow alleys of stone run beside open squares paved in patterned limestone. Buildings lean into the hillsides, their facades colored with tile and pastel tones that catch the afternoon light. Along the waterfront, old warehouses and piers stretch toward the river, reminders of the centuries when ships departed from here to cross the world. The rhythm of Lisbon is shaped by movement up and down the slopes. Trams climb the steepest streets, their tracks curving between tightly packed houses. Markets fill lower districts near the water, while higher ridges offer quiet spaces above the sound of traffic. Along the southern coast of Portugal spreads Ria Formosa, a lagoon system shaped by shifting sands, tides, and wind. A chain of barrier islands runs parallel to the mainland, forming channels and inlets that open and close with the movement of the sea. Behind the islands, calm waters extend across mudflats, salt marshes, and shallow lagoons that stretch far into the distance. The landscape changes constantly. Tides expose wide beds of sand and shell, then cover them again within hours. Narrow waterways wind through the marshes, their paths altered by storms that push new sand into the lagoon. Salt pans appear in flat geometric patches, their surfaces bright under the strong southern light. Bird life gathers in large numbers across the wetlands. Waders move through the shallows, and flocks rise from the marshes when the tide shifts. In eastern Portugal lies Monsanto, a village built among enormous granite boulders that dominate the slope of the mountain. Houses are fitted directly against the stones, their walls merging with the rock as if the settlement grew out of the hillside itself. Narrow paths twist between the boulders, rising toward the crest where the remains of a medieval fortress overlook the plains below. The terrain shapes every part of the village. Roofs press beneath overhanging stones, and stairways are carved into the rock or laid along natural ledges. From the higher paths, the view stretches across rolling fields and distant ridges, the landscape spreading outward in soft, pale colors under wide skies. In the center of Portugal rises Serra de Estrela, the highest mountain range on the mainland. Granite peaks stretch across the horizon, their slopes carved by deep valleys and plateaus, shaped by wind and water. The land lifts gradually from rolling hills into harsher ground, where boulders scatter across the ridgelines and the vegetation thins into heather, broom, and rocky outcrops. Glacial valleys cut through the mountains, their U-shaped forms still visible in the cliffs and high basins. Small lakes fill depressions left by ancient ice, their surfaces reflecting the surrounding stone. Streams descend from the upper slopes, forming channels that wind toward lower villages and farmland. Shepherding has long shaped the highlands. Stone shelters and dry walls appear across the plateaus, tracing routes used for seasonal grazing. Flocks move through the mountains in the warmer months, their paths marked by worn trails in the grass. In the northwest of Portugal lies Braga, a city set in a wide basin surrounded by low hills and forested ridges. The land slopes gently toward the center, where streets and squares spread across the valley floor. From the outskirts, the city appears woven into the landscape, its rooftops clustered between rising ground and narrow streams that cut through the plain. Braga carries centuries of layered architecture. Stone facades stand beside narrow lanes, paved in worn patterns, their shapes guided by the contours of the terrain. Churches and old civic buildings rise above the surrounding streets, their towers visible from the hills that encircle the city. Stairways climb steep slopes towards sanctuaries built on high ground, where terraces and platforms overlook the valley. The rhythm of the city moves between quiet courtyards and busy avenues. Markets fill open spaces with sound and movement, while older neighborhoods stand along shaded alleys where the air cools under overhanging trees. On Portugal's western edge lies Sintra-Cascais Natural Park, a landscape shaped by the collision of mountains, forest, and Atlantic coast. The Serra de Sintra rises abruptly from the surrounding lowlands, a granite ridge wrapped in dense vegetation. Moist air from the ocean sweeps inland, forming mist that drifts through the trees and gathers along the higher slopes. Light filters through shifting fog, revealing boulders, terraces, and steep paths cut into the mountain. The forest thickens around the ridge. Oaks, pines, and chestnut trees grow among older plantings that blanket the hillsides in uneven layers. Trails wind through cool, shaded corridors before opening onto rocky clearings, where the land falls sharply toward the sea. From these heights, the Atlantic stretches across the horizon, waves breaking against the cliffs far below. Coimbra rises along the banks of the Douro River, a city built on a steep hill that climbs from the water toward a broad crest. The slopes guide the structure of the city. Lower streets run close to the river, while narrow lanes and stairways ascend toward higher ground, cutting between buildings that lean into the gradient. From the waterfront, the upper quarters appear stacked in uneven tiers, their facades marked by stone walls and tiled roofs. The city carries a sense of depth shaped by centuries of use. Old corridors wind through the hillside in unexpected turns, opening into courtyards lined with arcades and shaded by overhanging trees. Upward paths lead to wider terraces where the view reaches across the river valley. Revealing bridges, fields, and clusters of houses that follow the contours of the hills. Along the Sintra coastline lies Azenhas Do Mar, a village built on a cliff that drops directly into the Atlantic. White houses cling to the slope in tight tiers, their walls following the angles of the rock as they descend toward the sea. From above, the settlement appears carved into the hillside, with narrow lanes and stairways threading between rooftops before reaching the lower terraces. At the base of the cliff, a natural basin shaped by the waves forms a tidal pool enclosed by stone. Swells break against the surrounding rock, sending spray over the edges, while calmer water gathers inside the protected space. The ocean stretches outward in a broad, restless surface, contrasting with the compact form of the village above. In northern Portugal lies Guimarães, a city spread across gentle hills and granite outcrops that shape its winding streets. The terrain rises and falls in small slopes, guiding lanes through tight corridors where stone walls and old houses follow the contours of the land. From the lower quarters, the upper districts appear above the rooftops, marked by towers and silhouettes of older structures set against the hills. Granite is present everywhere. Buildings rest on stone foundations, and narrow squares open between facades built from blocks cut from the surrounding landscape. Stairways climb uneven ground, heading to elevated terraces, where the city spreads outward in layers of red-tiled roofs. In these higher places, ridges and distant hills frame the horizon, giving the city a quiet sense of enclosure. The rhythm of Guimarães shifts between open and enclosed spaces. Broad plazas extend in front of old buildings, while alleys narrow into shaded passages where light falls in thin straps across the stone. Along the central coast of Portugal lies Aveiro, a city set between the Atlantic dunes and the quiet waters of a wide lagoon. The Ria de Aveiro spreads into channels and shallow basins that cut through the landscape. Shaping the city into islands and peninsulas connected by bridges and narrow roads. From the outskirts, the lagoon appears as a shifting patchwork of water, mud, and salt fields reflecting the sky. The urban center grows along the main canals. Buildings line the water in long facades of tile and pastel colors, their reflections breaking with the movement of boats pushed by tide and wind. Paths follow the edges of the canals, curving between stone embankments and low bridges that rise just enough to let small vessels pass beneath. In central Portugal lies Leiria, a city arranged along the Lisbon River as it winds through a broad valley. The river curves past low banks and patches of woodland, shaping flat corridors where streets and neighborhoods extend across the plain. Above the valley rises a steep hill crowned with a medieval castle, its walls and towers visible from nearly every part of the city. The terrain divides Leiria into distinct levels. At the base, wide avenues follow the course of the river, lined with bridges that connect districts on either side. Narrower streets branch upward toward the slopes, bending around stone terraces and climbing toward the fortress. From the higher paths, the valley opens in long views that stretch toward fields, ridges, and scattered villages beyond the city. Buildings in Leiria reflect a gradual climb from plain to hill. Lower quarters hold squares and markets close to the river, while the ascent leads through older neighborhoods where houses press against the incline. On the western side of São Miguel lies Sete Cidades, a vast volcanic caldera whose interior opens into lakes, cliffs, and rolling slopes shaped by ancient eruptions. The rim forms a high, uneven ring around the basin, its edges rising in sheer walls that drop hundreds of meters toward the valley floor. From the crest, the landscape appears divided between steep crater walls in the wide depression below. Where water fills two connected lakes separated by a narrow bridge of land. The descent into the caldera follows winding roads cut into the slopes. Vegetation thickens quickly, dense patches of hydrangea, cedars, and grasses growing in pockets sheltered from the wind. Along the Setúbal Peninsula rises Arrábida Natural Park, a line of limestone mountains that descend sharply toward the clear waters of the Salto estuary in the Atlantic. The slopes form long ridges and sudden cliffs, their surfaces marked by patches of exposed rock and dense vegetation that clings to the steep terrain. From the higher points, the coastline unfolds in narrow coves, bright sand, and deep blue water pressed against the base of the mountains. Mediterranean shrubs, evergreen oaks, and low pines fill the slopes, growing in pockets of soil held between the limestone outcrops. Trails move through these thickets, weaving between rocky steps before opening onto ledges that overlook the sea. In some places, the mountains fall so abruptly that small beaches appear only where the cliffs break into gentler curves. Inland, the terrain shifts into rolling hills and enclosed valleys. Whitewashed farm buildings and terraces appear along the lower ground, set between fields shaped by the region's dry climate. In the Alentejo Plains stands Évora, a city built on a gentle rise above the surrounding fields. The land stretches outward in wide open distances, marked by cork oak groves, stone walls, and long shadows cast across dry ground. From afar, the city appears as a cluster of white facades and tiled roofs gathered around a central ridge. Inside the old walls, streets follow the slope of the hill in slow curving lines. Narrow alleys lead between limestone buildings, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of sun and wind. Open squares interrupt the maze of streets, revealing arches, columns, and long arcades held in the shade of overhanging trees. Higher up, the terrain lifts toward older structures set on exposed stone, where towers and remnants of ancient foundations overlook the plains. Light moves differently here. In the afternoon, the walls glow pale against the dry landscape, and the rooftops heat under the wide sky. Setúbal stands along the northern edge of the Sado estuary, a wide body of water that moves between tidal flats, sandbanks, and deep channels leading toward the Atlantic. The city stretches across low ground near the water before rising into higher districts that overlook the bay. From the shoreline, the slopes of the Arabida Range form a steep wall to the west, their limestone cliffs dropping sharply toward the sea. The estuary shapes the rhythm of the city. Along the waterfront, long quays follow the shifting tides, and narrow inlets extend into the urban grid. Boats move through channels where the water changes color with depth, reflecting the light of open sky and distant hills. Inland streets climb gradually, their paths bending with the terrain and opening onto viewpoints where the estuary spreads in wide, calm surfaces. On the southern coast of Madeira lies Funchal, a city built on volcanic slopes that descend sharply toward the Atlantic. Neighborhoods rise in tiers along the mountainside, their streets following the contours of the land in long, curved lines. From the waterfront, the hills appear densely layered, with houses and terraces stacked one above another as they climb toward the higher ridges. The terrain shapes every movement through the city. Lower districts sit close to the harbor, where the coastline bends gently and the water deepens quickly. Streets here are broad and open, lined with stone pavements that run parallel to the sea. As the ground rises, paths narrow and twist, climbing between retaining walls and gardens planted on steep terraces. Viewpoints emerge unexpectedly, revealing the sweep of the bay and the jagged outline of the cliffs that frame it. Along the Algarve coast lies the Benagil Sea Cave, a chamber carved by waves into the limestone cliffs. From the outside, the shoreline appears as a line of rugged walls, but inside, the rock opens into a wide dome shaped by centuries of erosion. Light enters through a circular opening in the ceiling, falling in a single bright shaft that moves across the sand as the sun shifts overhead. The sea reaches directly into the cave. Swells push through the main arch, rising and lowering the water against the rock. Patterns form on the walls as reflections from the surface ripple across the limestone. At low tide, a narrow beach appears, its sand pressed between the curved walls and the dark water that fills the entrance. On the southern coast of São Miguel stands Ponta Delgada, a city built along a volcanic shoreline where dark stone meets the open Atlantic. The urban center stretches across a broad terrace above the water, with streets running parallel to the coast before rising gradually toward the interior hills. From the harbor, the city appears in long rows of white facades marked by black basalt outlines, a pattern shaped by the island's geology. The coastline forms the city's edge. Breakwaters extend into the sea, cutting the swells that roll in from deep water. Behind them, the marina encloses a calm basin where boats move between piers that follow the curve of the bay. Inland streets grow narrower as they approach the rising ground, bending around old lava flows and patches of uneven terrain. Along the Algarve coast lies Praia da Marinha, a beach enclosed by high limestone cliffs cut into sharp walls and towers. The ground drops suddenly toward the shore, revealing a strip of sand pressed between the rock and the clear, shifting water. From above, the coastline appears broken into arches, pillars, and small coves, formed by centuries of waves pushing into the stone. Light changes quickly along these formations. In the morning, the cliffs glow in warm tones, and the sea reflects pale greens and blues along the base of the rock. Narrow paths descend from the top of the cliffs to the beach, winding between exposed layers of limestone before opening onto the sand. Off the shoreline, isolated stacks rise from the water, their surfaces marked by erosion and the constant movement of the tide. On Terceira Island, Angra do Heroísmo spreads across a natural bay protected by steep volcanic slopes. The city rises from the harbor in a sequence of streets that follow the incline of the land, climbing toward ridges shaped by old lava flows. From the waterfront, the buildings form a dense pattern of white facades and red-tiled roofs. Arranged along the curve of the bay and the gradual rise toward the interior. The terrain creates a clear divide between lower and upper districts. Near the harbor, broad avenues run close to the water, where the shoreline bends around breakwaters and small piers. Inland, streets tighten as they climb, moving between stone walls, courtyards, and houses set directly against the slope. The hill above the city holds terraced paths and viewpoints where the bay, the open ocean, and the distant outlines of volcanic ridges come into view at once. Along the central Algarve coast lies Albufeira, a city spread across cliffs that descend in steep layers toward the Atlantic. The old center sits on a rocky platform above the water, its streets bending with the contours of the land before dropping into narrow stairways that lead toward the shoreline. From the heights, the coastline appears broken into coves, arches, and exposed limestone walls, shaped by waves that press against the base of the cliffs. The beaches form irregular pockets between these formations. Sand gathers in sheltered curves, while the surrounding rock rises in abrupt steps that catch the shifting light throughout the day. Paths and walkways follow the cliff tops, opening onto viewpoints where the sea stretches outward in wide, bright surfaces. In Portugal's far north lies the Minho Valley, a broad landscape defined by the river that winds between rolling hills and terraced fields. The Minho moves in long curves, its channel widening and narrowing as it passes through low floodplains and rocky stretches where the banks rise abruptly. From the higher ground, the valley appears as a mosaic of vineyards, villages, and patches of woodland arranged along the river's path. The slopes shape the rhythm of the region. Granite terraces step down toward the water, holding fields of vines protected by stone walls. Narrow roads follow the contours of the hills, weaving through clusters of houses built from the same stone that lines the terraces. In the early morning, mist settles across the valley floor, softening the outlines of the ridges before lifting to reveal the full breadth of the landscape. Along the Lagos coastline rises Ponta da Piedade, a headland carved into pillars, arches, and narrow passages, shaped by centuries of wind and Atlantic surf. The cliffs drop sharply toward the water, revealing layers of golden limestone cut into ridges and hollowed chambers. From the top, the coastline appears fractured into towers and thin bridges of rock, rising from the clear, shifting sea. Stairways descend through the cliffs, winding between exposed formations before reaching platforms close to the water. From below, the arches frame sections of the ocean, and small boats move through channels barely wide enough for passage. Valença do Minho stands on a high terrace above the Minho River, its layout shaped by the massive star-shaped fortifications that surround the town. The walls rise in angled bastions, forming a broad perimeter of stone that follows the natural slope of the hill. From the top of the ramparts, the river appears in long bends below, dividing Portugal from the green hills of Galicia across the water. Inside the walls, narrow streets run between stone houses arranged along the fortress grid. Paths climb gently toward the center, passing gates and small squares that open onto views of the surrounding countryside. The terrain drops sharply outside the southern bastions, where steep slopes fall toward fields, terraces, and the riverbank. On the northwestern edge of Madeira lies Porto Moniz, a village set between steep volcanic cliffs and the open Atlantic. The land drops abruptly toward the coast, where old lava flows spread into dark, uneven platforms that meet the waves. Natural pools formed within these formations hold clear water, their shapes defined by jagged rock walls that resist the force of the ocean just beyond them. The settlement gathers on the narrow flatland between the cliffs and the sea. Streets follow the coastline in gentle curves, bordered by low buildings that face the constant movement of the surf. Above the village, the cliffs rise in sharp green slopes cut by ravines that carry water from the high mountains toward the shore. On the southeastern flank of Serra de Estrela lies Covilhã, a city spread across steep slopes that rise sharply toward Portugal's highest mountains. Streets climb in angled lines through the hillside, bending with the terrain as they pass between terraced neighborhoods. From the lower districts, the upper quarters appear stacked in uneven layers, their rooftops following the incline of the mountain. Stairways replace straight roads, and narrow lanes twist around stone retaining walls that hold the older parts of the city to the slope. Higher paths reveal long views across the Cova de Beira plain, where fields, villages, and low ridges extend toward the horizon. In winter, cold air flows from the mountain, and snow settles on the upper streets, while the valley remains clear below. Along the Alentejo coast lies Porto Covo, a village set above cliffs that break into coves and narrow inlets, carved by the Atlantic. Whitewashed houses line the central square and nearby streets, their simple forms standing against the open horizon. From the edge of the settlement, paths lead toward the coastline, where the ground falls into rocky shelves shaped by wind and salt. The shoreline is rugged and uneven. Small beaches appear between outcrops, their sand pressed into tight spaces between dark stone walls. Waves enter the coves in long rhythmic pulses, rising against the rock before pulling back into deeper water. Further along the cliffs, the headlands open into broad views of the ocean, stretching in a clear line beneath the shifting light of the Alentejo coast. Along Portugal's western coast lies Ericeira, a town built on high cliffs that overlook the open Atlantic. Streets run close to the edge before turning inland toward toward squares lined with white and blue houses. From the cliff tops, the shoreline unfolds in a sequence of rocky shelves, coves, and exposed reefs shaped by the constant movement of the waves. The sea dominates the landscape. Swells travel long distances before rising against the uneven bottom, forming lines of water that break in predictable patterns along the coast. At low tide, the rocky platforms stretch outward in dark textured surfaces, revealing channels and pools carved by years of erosion. Paths descend toward small beaches set between the cliffs, where the sand narrows at high tide and widens as the water retreats. On the western edge of the Algarve lies Alcacer, a town divided by a river that winds through a narrow valley cut into the surrounding hills. The older quarter stands on a steep rise above the plain, its white houses climbing toward the ruins of a hilltop castle. From the upper paths, the valley spreads below in fields, marshes, and winding channels that move toward the ocean. Across the river, the newer districts extend along gentler terrain, their streets following the contours of the low ground. Between the two sides, bridges cross the slow-moving water, connecting the slopes with the flatlands. As the land rises westward, the valley gives way to rolling hills covered in brush and pine, leading toward the rugged coastline of the Vicentine shore. On the eastern Algarve coast lies Tavira, a town divided by the slow curves of the Gilao River as it moves toward the waters of the Rio Formosa. The historic center rises on gentle slopes above the banks, its streets arranged around courtyards, tiled facades, and remnants of older walls. From the riverside, the town appears in white and ochre tones, reflected in the calm surface that widens with the tide. Bridges cross the river in low arches, linking the two sides of the town. Along the water, broad walkways follow the channel, opening onto squares shaded by trees. Inland streets climb toward higher ground, where churches, stone steps, and narrow lanes are built along the contours of the hill. Views from these upper paths reveal the river branching into channels that extend toward the wetlands of the Rio Formosa. Along Portugal's central coast lies Nazaré, a town divided between a high plateau and the wide beach below. The upper district sits on a steep promontory, its streets arranged along the edge of a cliff that falls sharply toward the Atlantic. From this height, the coastline stretches in long arcs of sand and exposed rock, with the sea shifting in broad patterns of color and movement. Below the cliffs, the lower town extends across the flat ground behind the beach. Streets run parallel to the shore, and the waterfront forms an open line where the sand meets the narrow urban edge. The beach widens toward the north, where the land rises again into a darker, more rugged section of coast. In the interior of Portugal stands Sortelha, a village enclosed by stone walls and set among massive granite boulders. The settlement occupies the crest of a hill, where narrow lanes move between houses built directly against the rock. From the gate, the path climbs toward the castle tower, which stands on an exposed outcrop overlooking the surrounding ridges and valleys. The terrain shapes every turn of the village. Boulders rise beside doorways, form natural courtyards, and anchor stairways that bend around their edges. Inside the walls, the streets are quiet and tightly woven, opening occasionally into small terraces that reveal the wide landscape beyond. The granite carries the same tone through houses, walls, and ground, giving the village a sense of being carved from a single piece of stone. Portugal is vivid, ancient, and endlessly varied, where volcanic islands rise from the Atlantic, river valleys cut through green hills, and coastal cliffs meet calm villages shaped by stone and wind. If this glimpse sparked your curiosity, hit subscribe. There are countless more landscapes and countries waiting to be explored right here on the channel.